In this video, I will explain how we ended up with a guided democracy and what that means. I will look into the ideas that led to a mix of elites in charge and a public that seems to have power but doesn't really make the decisions. First, what is a guided democracy? A guided democracy functions as a de facto autocracy. Such governments are legitimized by elections that are free and fair but do not change the state's policies, motives and goals. In other words, the government controls elections so that the people can exercise all their rights without truly changing public policy. Under guided democracy, the state's continuous use of propaganda techniques prevents the electorate from having a significant impact on policy. Guided democracy is driven by abstract forces rather than individual authoritarian leadership. It thrives by fostering political disengagement rather than active citizen participation. And it depends heavily on private media channels rather than public institutions to spread propaganda that reinforces the official narrative. In order to know how we ended up with a guided democracy, we have to go back to the Greeks, who came up with the idea of having two political groups. One group wanted regular folks to fill political jobs based on luck and voting, that's a demos, while the other group preferred a leader-focused democracy where important people, usually aristocrats, were in charge and everyone else just went along with them. Back then, the demos represented the idea of regular people acting together in their community, not just as voters. But after the Peloponnesian War, a lot of the big-shot Athenians didn't like this idea of democracy much anymore. Their dislike of democracy stuck around for centuries, and even now it's influenced how people think and talk about democracy, leading to lots of different versions of elitism. They saw the demos as unpredictable, rowdy and not very smart, jealous of the rich, talented and high-born people. Basically, they thought the regular folks were trouble and needed to be kept in check for good governance. After Athenian democracy ended, the elites worked hard to make sure the demos never realized how much power they actually had. It wasn't until the English Civil Wars of the 1600s that people started to question the old idea of the demos. That's when modern democratic ideas about everyone having equal rights and being able to participate in politics started to take hold. English politics also introduced the idea of aristocracy, where people with higher birth, lots of money and some education felt they deserved to rule. Even though the idea of nobility didn't really stick in the American colonies, the gap between the rich and powerful and everyone else continued. This wealth divide got worse during popular revolutions like the ones in the colonies and France, which seemed to confirm this split between the elite and the common people. When James Madison said, "Had every Athenian citizen been a Socrates, every Athenian assembly would still have been a mob," he was basically expressing a fear that even really smart people couldn't prevent the chaos that comes with direct democracy, like they had in Athens. In the early days of modern times, the philosopher who wrote a lot about republicanism was Machiavelli. He thought that to run things well, you needed a mix of smart leaders, that's a Republican idea, and regular people backing them up, that's a Democratic idea. For this plan to work, they needed to find young folks who cared more about helping everyone than getting rich or being super fancy. They'd be the ones in charge, working for the good of everybody. Machiavelli thought that as society changed, with regular folks like artisans, merchants and tradesmen getting involved in politics, a system couldn't last if it only looked out for the rich and powerful few, whether they were nobles or just wealthy. He believed that the old idea of regular people being a rowdy mob was wrong. Actually, they were more stable and reliable than the fancy and unpredictable aristocrats. So, in a republic, power should come from a wide range of people, not just a few. But that didn't mean everyone got to make decisions. Instead, regular folks were supposed to back up the rulers of the republic. They joined the militia and, most importantly, support the people who were in charge and knew how to run things. To make this work, regular folks needed to be educated and taught that they should be loyal to their city or state, not just the rich and powerful. Machiavelli never really made a strong argument for why regular folks should get more involved in politics, or why democracy was a good idea. He mostly liked the idea of regular people being there to support those in power because they didn't ask for much. All they really wanted was to be left alone and kept safe in what little they owned. So, one thing that Machiavelli was really clear about was that his elite friends had to respect regular folks' property and their families. This mix of ideas later went to Europe and England, and via that to the American colonies. If you watch some of my other videos on Lippmann and Bernays, the demos are often translated in their texts as the bewildered herd. Guided democracy has no overt plan to suppress all opposition, impose ideological uniformity or racial purity, or seek the traditional form of empire. It allows free speech, venerates the constitution, and operates within a multi-party system that theoretically secures a role for opposition parties. Rather than revolting against an existing system, it claims to be defending it. A guided democracy doesn't have to actively try to stop people from disagreeing. The uniformity imposed on opinion by the private media conglomerates performs that job efficiently. This seemingly restraint shows a big difference between traditional dictatorship and guided democracy. In the former, politics control money, but now money controls politics. Since the Cold War started, the idea of citizens being the ones who have power and say in the government has been replaced by the idea of the electorate. Basically just the people who vote during elections. Between elections, regular citizens don't have much say in how things are run. They're more like virtual citizens who can share their opinions on things, but those opinions are often just answers to specific questions that are asked. The Western method is to prepare for elections by first splintering the citizenry into distinct categories such as between 20 and 35 years old, or white male over 40, or female college graduate. The potential electorate is thus divided into small subgroups that candidates can then target with messages tailored to their values, prejudices, or habits of that particular category. The effect is to accentuate what separates citizens, to plant suspicions and thereby further promote demobilization by making it more difficult to form coherent majorities around common beliefs. How people shape opinions and use them in politics shows how the old political system works. It's a mix of high technology, studies about how people think, deals with the government, and support from big companies. In a truly democratic system, unlike in a guided democracy where only a small group of people are polled to see if they agree or disagree, citizens would be seen as active participants in wielding power and influencing policies. While traditional totalitarianism aimed to create followers rather than true citizens, guided democracy achieves similar results by offering alternatives like consumer sovereignty and shareholder democracy, which gives people a feeling of participation without actual responsibilities. Traditional totalitarianism took control by taking over the existing system and then destroying it once in power. The change was sudden and total. Guided democracy, on the other hand, has a different backstory. It's not dramatic. There's no big movement pushing it forward. No sudden takeovers or marches on capital cities. Instead, it's a slow and almost unnoticeable change over time. Under guided democracy, leaders like to control the population similar to how a CEO runs a company, manipulating, sometimes comforting, sometimes ignoring, and using the huge power of mass media, advertising tricks, and public opinion strategies. You can see democracy getting weaker and weaker by looking at how fewer and fewer companies own the media, and how they control what gets said in it. When people argue about topics like the importance of trans toilets, whether religious groups should get government money, or if gay people should be able to marry, the goal isn't really to find answers. These debates are made to split people apart while hiding the real differences in wealth and power. They also distract voters from important issues like jobs and healthcare. These culture wars might seem like they show people are really involved in politics, but actually, that's just a distraction. The media and politicians make a big deal out of them to keep people from focusing on what really matters. You might think it's strange to talk about a guided democracy when politicians are saying that they want smaller government. They talk about cutting back on government spending and regulations to make things more efficient. But if we ignore this warning, we miss a big part of what's happening in our society. Big companies are getting more powerful, and the government is stepping back from taking care of people. To scoff at the warning would be to miss the main objective of guided democracy, the expansion of private, i.e. mainly corporate, power, and the selective abdication of government responsibility for the well-being of the citizenry. These changes aren't happening because politicians want less control over people. Instead, it shows that things like defense, public health, communication, transport, and education can be managed by private companies without much oversight from the public. Even though in theory the people have the authority to choose their leaders through elections, they don't really have much control over how elections actually work. Things like campaign money, TV ads, media agenda setting, and debate rules are all controlled by those who have the money and expertise, often from big companies. This means elections end up being tightly controlled by those who know how to use money and power to influence the outcome. Running a guided democracy means making sure that only certain views are allowed to be heard, and control stays in the hands of a special group of people, the ones who are considered right by those in charge. These chosen few have been picked out and rewarded by those in power to be the ones who get to make decisions first. In guided democracy, political parties focus on winning over voters without aiming for widespread party membership. So most people may vote for a party without officially joining it. While a small number actively support the party's activities, even fewer are sought after as big money donors. Essentially, parties want a small group of dedicated supporters, some generous donors, and a larger pool of occasional voters influenced by TV ads. So, by discouraging active involvement from members, the party shifts away from citizen democracy towards a mass democracy. They're seeking followers who are primary patriots, eager to believe in their country's moral, economic, and political greatness and its sanctity. These followers prefer security over participation, wanting leaders to handle the challenges of politics while they focus on their own lives. In a guided democracy, the goal isn't necessarily to convince citizens, but rather to either pacify or stir them up, depending on the desired outcome. Unlike what the ancients worried about, guided democracy isn't about a tyrannical majority dominating. Instead, it flourishes when the electorate is evenly split, preventing any strong majority from forming. This situation boosts the influence of corporate lobbies, which are highly organized, well-funded minority groups that act regardless of election outcomes. In the era of democracy, elitism's job isn't to fight against democracy directly, but to outwardly accept it while secretly convincing the majority to vote against their own interests and power. Any political party or politician that may pop up to challenge the system is usually quickly dismissed as a populist or shot down by the mainstream media. If you truly value democracy, then I would encourage you to seek out alternative forms of media and not be guided into the correct way of voting.